This has been a very upsetting last couple of days. Now we have seen shootings from city to city to city, and now in Troutdale, just outside of Portland, Oregon. Some of them have been mass shootings, some of them have been more isolated, and in addition to the shootings, we're seeing more extreme, violent behavior. And there's a rash of videos online that you can find of people stripping down on subways, women in particular, sometimes apparently suffering from some sort of psychosis that they're a goddess and need to be worshipped. There's some of these terminologies, even Elliot Rogers, the man that was the son of the assistant director of the Hunger Games, he talked about his godliness and his entitlement psychology was definitely there. So there are so many different media outlets that are marginalizing people that have been advocates of freedom, libertarians, so many other things. They're being boxed in with this, which creates a dangerous situation for people that are sharing information, things related to freedom of any form whatsoever. Freedom has become the buzzword in anti-government. And I remember that moment when that Navy security officer spoke into his walkie-talkie and said they're anti-government when I was utilizing my First Amendment the other night on Portland's waterfront. It's become a frightening time to be alive, and that's part of the plan. Not only are they fermenting fear of people that are perceived to be anti-government, revolutionary in thought and thinking, we also have the fear that we have to live under, those that are promoting freedom and promoting a different way of looking at reality. And being socially ostracized is one thing. When you stand outside the mass of humanity, looking in and making observations and making videos and expressing our understanding of what this nature of reality is all about. It's one thing to be socially ostracized and even another to be homeless, but it's another level to know that your kind is being targeted on a deeper level than ever before. And we are the modern Gnostics, and this is a modern witch hunt. Gnostics as in to know. And I think what we're dealing with ultimately behind these shootings are the archons. I believe that there's a non-human intelligence behind this, directing this, that's playing on people's reactionary emotions, such as anger, which can lead to rage and violent behavior. So in some of these situations we can see psychotropics. There's other hallmarks of things not being as they are, and this is consistent with so much of what we've seen. But on another level, it is so traumatizing for people that know the truth to see these things and feel like a day is going to come where their number will be called or that knock will be at the door. In addition to a lifetime of being ostracized from most social groups because they're contrarian in nature. There is so much suffering taking place. And I want to say, I've already written an article, false flags being tied to solar flares, and that was an aspect of the presentation that I gave in 2013. And people need to be able to see the trends, because we just had a major solar flare. Actually, it wasn't even that huge. It was moderate. It was the effect it had on the planet. When it connected with the planet, a geomagnetic storm did occur. Even NOAA put out a warning. And so while people have their focus in relation to the sun on the electric grid, they're not looking at the human emotion impact. And it's also been said that the archons, some choose to call them demons or the jinn, that they exist in the unseen realms, in particular in the electromagnetic spectrum. Well, that is the very thing that's activated when our planet is hit with these solar flares, when our magnetic field reverberates, when it shields the Earth from these impacts. The magnetic field itself is charged with the solar wind. And that's not necessarily a good thing or a negative thing. It's connected to life, and it's connected to energy. But perhaps not just for humans. Because we see time and time again, when we have these events, these solar events, we see the reaction on the ground. We see an increase in shootings. There's a solar flare right before the Boston bombing. So even if some of this is staged, they're staging these events to coincide with these solar flares or these magnetic storms. The question is, how much knowledge is there about the sun's activity and abilities to predict the solar flares? Exist is still the question, because we know that NASA doesn't give us all the information. They give us pieces of the larger puzzle. In many cases, NASA appears to be wrong in their projections. Sometimes they're dead on correct, and many times they're not. So the question is, how much knowledge does exist about the sun's activity when the larger solar flares are going to occur, and other information in relation to the sun and how it affects human consciousness. How is this knowledge used for those engaged in the dark occult or sorcery? And how are other forms of mind control technologies, be they cell phone towers, smart meters, satellites, or anything else, used in conjunction with the solar flares to create an angry, lower vibrational state on the planet? I think that is something that we need to look at more. I've already found correlations between earthquakes and solar flares, or solar flares and even storms like Hurricane Katrina. There was an X-class solar flare right before that took place. But there's also people out there that cite evidence that that storm was directed in a 45-degree angle into New Orleans. So that storm may have started organically, powered by the sun affecting the jet stream, and all the other ways that the solar flare can affect extreme weather patterns on the earth, storms, things of that nature, tornadoes, thunderstorms, flooding, and there's a long list. Of course, official science, scientism, the religion of science, does not recognize this. And even though people can go and they can see the patterns, they can use they can apply pattern recognition to what we're talking about. Science does not officially recognize any connection between the sun and earth changes. And so we have a very confused population right now. Going back to the shooting, some people are wondering, is it just me, or are there more shootings? They're not even asking what's going on. They don't know what's going on. Is it just me, or are there just more shootings? And their friends will come in and say, oh, it's just the media. They're just, oh, I agree. There they were asking the question that could have led them to other questions, and their friend comes in, shuts down the inquisitive energy. Oh, no, it's always been this way. I agree. Because, of course, nobody wants to stand out of the herd and start asking questions that other people don't want to ask. Answers that some people don't want to know. With that Hurricane Katrina situation, there are many that believe HAARP was involved. There are other technologies. HAARP is kind of a buzzword for the overall spectrum of technologies that may exist. And by the way, technologies that are owned and controlled by other nations. Even though the United States and the HAARP facility in Alaska gets a lot of attention, what about what Russia has? What about what China has? What about what Europe has? Or Britain? Or any other country for that matter, but in particular China. You know, that nation that's going to have their own rover on the moon by 2020? China, the same company that owned the satellite that flew over the United States several years ago. People don't ask these questions, so they look at HAARP and they think HAARP when it could be something larger than HAARP or other than HAARP. The reason I brought HAARP up is because there are many people that believe there's some form of technology being used, be it weather modification or other technologies that allow them to harness the power that is already in the electromagnetic spectrum on a technological level, whether it be with the use of satellites or things on the ground, or a coordination of different technologies, where they harness something that's already there, something already charged naturally by the sun, and then steer it somewhere. Because when we look at Fukushima, we see an X-class solar flare days before that took place. Before the earthquake and before the tsunami. Yet there are some people that cite websites that show activity at heart. Then some may question the credibility of some of these websites. Some say these websites have been taken down since. But there are many different reasons, including people that look at the magnetic field itself in particular, that look at video, satellite video of the Earth, and they could see the jet stream, and they study the fluctuations. And there's YouTube channels like Suspicious Observer and many others, I think some are way better than others, that study strange fluctuations that shouldn't be there around storms. In particular, changes taking place in the jet stream and other changes before certain earthquakes in certain places. Potential evidence that there's some sort of tampering itself with the Earth's energy, with the Earth's grid. So we don't know how far this technology has become, how sophisticated it has become in its totality, because we just simply see snippets of the picture. We don't see the whole picture. We just see what they want us to see. And as many of you, I'm sure, have already heard many, many times, if you see it in Hollywood, it probably exists in some other form, or they unravel technologies in Hollywood that have futuristic plots that are really showing the technology that's about to be developed or already developed, including truths in some of those scripts that have a mix of truth and disinformation that's meant to program the viewer. Hence we have all of these shows involving extraterrestrials visiting the Earth and coming back to the Earth, including TV shows that are leading people to believe that they are our creators, instead of another way of looking at this, that they are tampering with the Creator's creation and are seeking to dominate the world of man. And we see this, we see the archonic agenda in memes throughout time. Lord of the Rings is one example. The Matrix is another example. And if you haven't seen The Matrix for many years, I recommend another viewing of that. And there's different videos on YouTube that are analyzing the clues and the information within the Matrix, the spiritual knowledge. Follow the White Rabbit. That is a reference to synchronicity. Follow the clues. And there's so many other things in that movie. And there are other movies as well. Fantastic Planet, which came out in 1973. It was made in France. Of course, we have They Live, John Carpenter's They Live from the year 1988. We have V, the miniseries from the 1980s. We also have Alien Nation. There are different memes, including the work of Philip K. Dick and Blade Runner, that involve these inorganic, some say cybernetic beings involved in the enslavement of humanity that are also known as the mind parasites. Who benefits from a world where people are afraid to go outside and they're afraid of each other, where it's man versus woman, woman versus man, black versus white, white versus black, and every other perceived color and group and tribe and nation state? That's the world you and I live in. And people that have been saying that this is the collective shift in consciousness, or those that have been expecting a collective shift in consciousness, are promoting disinformation. And it's painful to even address this because so many of our brothers and sisters have been caught up in what I feel is a situation where the dark forces and the spiritual forces of deception are actually working through some of those bodies of information, which in the end result in people doing nothing to change the world that we live in now by promising them a utopia. And there are people now today, they're going to great lengths to expand upon this thought, because so much disinformation in the New Age community, and along with many religious institutions, has been growing all this time as we've been approaching the millennium and now beyond. People are seeking something spiritually, and I think that we need to continue to look in this direction. to create these shifts in consciousness within ourselves that can impact the field around us, instead of assuming that the field around us has been upgraded by beings that we have needed to seek out and ask to assist us. And that includes people thinking that we need to ask for ETs to upgrade our DNA in the body, because when you're focused on the body, you're not focused on the soul, you're not focused on the spirit, you're still in the material plane. You're still in the five sense reality. And this is preposterous. This is classic disinformation, and this type of disinformation has been recycling itself throughout time with different packaging. And it comes by different names. But these hidden controllers, the unseen realms, I see them behind the spat of shootings. And there are people that say, that's too superstitious. Human beings are just like that. This is a stressful time. And it is true that we have this human nature, but why don't people question where that human nature comes from? And why we see patterns where all of a sudden you see shootings, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, in a matter of days. And then when you see the news come and say, the so-and-sos of the world, the revolutionaries of the world, they are the ones that have been putting out information that is feeding this type of activity. The question is, if they start dropping the hammer in a way they've never done before, are there people out there willing to hide people in an underground railroad sort of way? I don't know if that day has come. I know how I live, and I know I'm on my own. There was never any safety net for me to fall through when things started tumbling, and now I'm trying to build everything up from the scratch up. Of course, I've never really had anything to lose, so you could say I've been at an evil level of a playing field for some time. I've just moved from place to place, and I've gone through a lot of change, and I've had a lot of challenge in my life. But there's also been the moments of triumph. And I think this is all happening for a reason in my own life, to make me stronger as a speaker, but to show people you can speak about these issues and do it without expecting any riches from the world or anyone to receive you well, or for you to be not ostracized from society, because that's exactly what happens when you go in a certain direction and you speak out against those dark unseen forms, those dark unseen realms, the sinister, wicked, dark occult, which is behind government today and behind the heads of religion. There are consequences for that in some way, shape, or form. But the fear that is being put out there to those in on the know of what's going on is that at any time your number could come up if you are deemed to be associated with anyone involved in this activity. And going now to Mr. Miller, Jared Miller, and his Facebook page, a lot of questions about his Facebook activity. You know, they seem like genuine people that have genuine concerns, but it's also cookie cutter. They hit on all the different issues. And there's the mainstream media quoting them. They were against fluoride. They were pro-freedom. They were anti-government. They were anti-police. They like Cop Watch. They like this personality on the internet. They like that personality on the internet. They like this video by Larkin Rose. They like this video from such and such. And so now all these people that have gotten people's attention, talking about these freedom-based ideas from their own understanding, their own education, their own perspective, now they're flagged. Now people are looking at them. And then you have people like Corey Watkins in Texas, that was made fun of recently by Bill Maher and Jon Stewart, constantly making references to open carry activists as men that have a sexual interest in their guns, with Jon Stewart stooping to low levels, new low levels, using pornographic imagery of male testicles attached to a gun pointing up, signifying an erection, while the crowd laughs like a bunch of seals. And they put up the picture of Corey Watkins and another gentleman. And now Corey's getting death threats. Matthew Short, I believe, was the other gentleman. because they've been publicized. And part of them going out was to raise attention and awareness of the issue. And now that all these open carry marches are taking place and meetups, you have the spat of shootings like nothing I've ever seen, striking tear into the hearts of the people worldwide, not just the Americans, with more governments around the world calling for an end to the Second Amendment within the United States. That includes China. They put out their own report, but at the same time striking fear into the hearts of those that have been doing the right thing this entire time, without fear of persecution, because we are in the right, because they are in the right, and we have truth at our side. We cannot be defeated, but the we, I believe, is a body and movement of souls that are here at this time to rise above these circumstances and rise above our own fears. And that's why I have to say now is there's no guarantee that we're going to survive the body, because nobody survives this world. We all go at some time. And this isn't code for advocating any join to any revolution, because this is so far deeper than that, the spiritual war taking place. But there's no guarantee that the modern Gnostics will not be persecuted like those of the past. And for those that don't know what Gnostic means, it's just a term I'm using to describe those that understand what's going on. And there are clearly people today in the society that understand what's going on politically, spiritually, that understand where all this is headed. And we understand that the vast majority of the population doesn't understand. And those are the ones that are being told that those that are talking about these issues are linked in with people that are already now causing violence. It's no longer a matter of when or if, but it's a matter of it's already happened. And now they are trying to create the association between people that want freedom and are not content with the way things are, and people that are going out and killing cops, leaving swastikas. See, I'm in a unique position. I'm born into a country that later on conspires with other countries to cover up the events of 9/11 and invade country after country, leading to the murder of millions of people. And yet I spoke out regardless of the potential for anything to happen to me, and found myself in a lifetime where I don't have a family support group. And I never really did, but becoming who I became, who I am, came with a price. And I live with that every day without the need to tell the whole story, because the whole story's never been told about my childhood. I've shared snippets. I feel like one day I have to communicate that. But I bring that up to say that now I'm dealing with it at different fronts. I've already dealt with that and the programming that people have in this country, and now they're shifting towards the white man. And they're shifting towards, and I don't mean they're shifting away from the other things, they're turning the heat up within this own country to shift to the male-female imbalance and the way that they report things in the news, instead of questioning where this is coming from, instead of addressing or questioning the root cause of some of our social ills, like rape. They create a climate of fear and resentment in every perceivable group that you can think of. There's a program that has that group set against a perceived opposite other group. And so to some people, I just look like another white, privileged male. And I talked about that in a previous video, my exchange with a woman at New Seasons. And that leads into another conversation which I would rather not address. And the path of a good man or righteous man or honorable man is not a path in which you will be rewarded automatically. There may be good things that come from it, but oftentimes our lives end in persecution and death because we speak against what the establishment is doing, in particular what they have done to curtail the rights of women throughout time and throughout space. This is almost beyond what we're fighting for, what we've been fighting this entire time, which I believe as souls we've been dealing with or a part of this type of a matrix for some time. I can only speak for myself when I feel that the perceptions that I have and thoughts that I have come from beyond a limited frame of reference. And it's something that I question every day. I question my own origins. I question my future. I struggle in the present. Because every day, when these things are happening, it's painful to not feel like I can change it. It's depressing to know that some people aren't going to get this. And this may continue for the rest of our lives while we reside here on Earth, because there's nothing that's slowing down this machine. The walls are closing in now. People want easy solutions, but they don't exist to this. This matrix doesn't have an easy solution. The only solution that exists is to find a way out of it. This plane of reality, there is no accident that you and I are here. More things happen for a reason than we're willing to believe. You know, I'm going to expand upon some of these topics in the future. We could change this overnight if we wanted to. Women and men, men and women could change this overnight if they wanted to. If they were to truly love each other. And there are so many different ways you can love someone. We're programmed to only think of a few. And of those few, sexually, people are programmed, people allow themselves to operate on their lower instincts, and they operate more out of lust and the lower chakras than that from the heart. That's not to say there's no value in being a human being, but the heartfelt consciousness, that's our ultimate defense against these dark beams, because they are creating a climate of fear where they want people to buy bigger locks and bigger guns and prepare for this manufactured civil war. Meanwhile, the things that are coming later, they don't want us prepared for those things. They may use predictive programming in certain TV shows and say in the 2020s there's going to be an EMP and basically echo warnings that I've given before those things were even in movies. Check out the interview between Leon Legant, Legant, and myself. 2007, we talk about his vision of China invading the United States. This is a topic I'll address in another time. We're heading somewhere that's being planned for us, and this is nothing new. What we're seeing now should confirm that there is a direct link between the solar flares and these false flag events, in addition to other links between solar flares, CMEs, magnetic storms, and other events, earthquakes, cycles of war, domestic issues, people acting out, drug abuse, but also spiritual experiences. Because in the darkness, we may choose to seek the light like we've never sought before. So there is balance in this if you seek to find it. And the reason these things are taking place is because they are trying to destroy people's desire Well, first and foremost on so many things. I see people posting more and more every day, I don't want to live in this world anymore, and neither do I. But those thoughts can become toxic and can influence our behavior, and we can become inactive, depressed, traumatized in a post-traumatic stress disorder type of a way. We can become catatonic zombies in our own way. We become sheeple-like in our own way when we succumb to the fear, and we put our fears together into one big pool of disgusting energy. I've spoken before, when I was off the grid, about the deeper reflections that I had about people that knew these things are happening, and yet they remain working their jobs in these cities. And the only reason I returned is because I had no allies off the grid, and I felt, and I do feel, there's a time to come back and finish one's work. And there's also a time to go to the mountain, to leave the city, to be in nature. And there's a time to come to the city and do one's work. My work, my friends, is not Taco Bell. It's not busser boy Alex at such and such, or a warehouse worker over here, although I'm willing to do certain things. The real reason I came back to Portland is not to get in the rat race. It was to start the next version of Outside the Box TV, which is going to hone in on some of these issues even deeper. You know, I'm preparing my mind for this upcoming season and the type of shows that I'm going to be writing. And now I'm also preparing my mind for, if I stay around for the winter, what the shows will be like after that. I already have the first 13 shows planned out. And the reason 13 is significant is because there's 13 shows. No conspiracy here, there's 13 shows per season or series, which is every, or quarter, which is 3 months. But I want people to question their reality. I want people to question why they're here. I want people to question why we're seeing the forces of darkness operate in the way that they are operating. On the most basic, fundamental level, I want people to question what they've been told, what they're being told about all of this, as people see these things in the news. If people don't have a point of reference, it's just simply going to traumatize them, and they will become more food for the dark entities that literally feed off of that frequency that's emitted when we're terrified. And that frequency is being emitted now. I can feel it, and there is a feeding taking place by the beings that inhabit the electromagnetic spectrum, which ironically was just activated by the recent geomagnetic storm caused by the CME impacting the Earth. I want to thank you for watching, and I'm going to continue on this in the next video.